Hello there. You seem to have lost your way, as few make their way to this corner of YouTube on purpose. But that's okay. You should stay a moment and listen to the ramblings of just another voice who likes to talk about games. I am Friloquy, and I'll be talking about a game that I thought was something else entirely when I installed it. Remnant from the Ashes is one of those games that is often described as Souls-like. I won't bother making a comprehensive argument for or against that comparison, but I will say that playing From the Ashes did at bare minimum invoke memories of playing Dark Souls. Here's the thing. Because I purchased From the Ashes almost blindly, I didn't know what I was really getting into. A game where you actually have to pay attention to what you're doing during combat or you'll end up dying a lot, and even if you do pay attention, will still end up dying a lot, wasn't really on my radar. But the images I was seeing from the storefront alongside some of the positive reviews made me say, why not? As much as I'm not very good at these kind of games, once I start playing them, it's very difficult for me to move away from it. It's almost as if the game personally exhausts me and I just can't back down until I get through all of it and actually manage to say that I beat it. The sheer mental investment and emotional attachment the game manages to induce for me attests to its quality. So yeah, I have no apprehension about stating that the game is good in a general fashion. The gameplay was responsive and satisfying. While clearing the maps to reach the boss fights was far easier than I expected, the boss fights themselves were challenging enough that they eventually got me frustrated to the point where I had to put my controller down in exasperation. However, as anyone that has placed themselves through this process can attest, this makes the victory that much more enjoyable when you finally do achieve it, unless you've decided that you're done with the game. As with any game that lets you die, yet keep leveling up, the possibility of hitting a wall and leveling up to the point where the rest of the game just becomes a lot easier than it probably should be at that moment is there. This situation arose when I had to face the Undying King, and I leveled up so much that the rest of the game felt a lot easier than it probably should have. Obviously, if I would have figured out how to beat the Undying King sooner, it wouldn't be as easy for the rest of the game, but I didn't, and so the problem presented itself. The visuals of the game were thematically consistent. While there was some variety in the regions, all of the regions kept that same dark, gritty, macabre overtone to them. Whether it was the desolate region of Rom, the swamps of Corsus, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, or the forest of Yesha, likely I'm pronouncing that wrong, each region had its own unique look, but did not stray far from the same consistent overtone, except for that portal intermediate region, but that was more of a transition area than anything else. Anyway, each region worked well within the frame of the story, and there was enough there to spark my curiosity about the story itself. The game doesn't rely on much narration to present itself. That task was left to my own interest in exploring it. Obviously, certain NPCs will reveal enough information about the story to allow for the game to narratively progress, but any further investigation requires looking for scraps of revealing information scattered throughout the various regions. Personally, I find this method of conveying a game story particularly well suited for the kind of game that attempts to present a desolate and desperate situation. The weapons are unique and maintain the same overall aesthetic of the game. However, utilizing them effectively had me change up the build and playstyle of my character. But in the end, I got through most of the game using the same set of armor, handgun slash long gun combination I received roughly in the middle of the game. I rarely even used the melee attack, which I did find odd considering I was playing the warrior, but I just really didn't enjoy using it. While the game at times gives the impression that playing it as a co op would enable a different, if not more enjoyable experience, at no time did I find my single player experience bogged down by any implementation of mechanics that demanded multiplayer. Basically, I didn't feel that any portion of the game was explicitly designed to encourage multiplayer at the expense of the single player experience. There are individual powers and items that give the impression that they would work best when playing co op, but while maybe not being utilized to their full potential using them as part of a single experience, they work well enough for me to progress through the game smoothly. Ultimately, the game is not complex, and in fact, I would say it's basic enough to get into without the need to have ever even touched any other Soul like game. There are certain mechanics that, if utilized effectively, are conducive to staying alive, but dying in a game like this is really just par for the course. If a game like this doesn't get me a little irritated at bare minimum, or at the extreme end completely exasperated, then it's really not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So As already stated, I believe the game is good, but I'm going to qualify that by saying that the game was designed and created to appeal to the crowd of gamers that enjoys a challenging and involved combat experience. Not too long ago, the developers released some new content that allows for a greater degree of replayability. Basically, you don't have to play through the main campaign to retry the game's different regions. This enables you to pretty much grind and farm for better gear without disturbing your main progression. There was also the release of Leto's Lab, which was an entirely new quest exploring some more of the origin story. On a side note, this story does have a proto Warhammer 40k vibe, almost like the movie Event Horizon. Obviously, nothing to do with Warhammer 40k canonically. I think that's right, but definitely reminiscent of the whole Chaos realm. I won't stretch that comparison very far, but I think my enjoyment of everything Warhammer 40k might very well have played a considerable role in my interest of the From Ashes story. Anyway, before I stray too far into a Warhammer 40k tangent, I'll end it by saying that this game provided me with a challenging yet enjoyable single player experience that might very well have been more comedic with friends. It's likely that it would have been less immersive. So, implementing my arbitrary scale of general greatness, I'll go ahead and give this game a 3.5 out of 5 Undying Hearts. It's a game that wants to provide a very specific kind of experience and provides that experience well. I doubt it will win over any converts to the soul-like genre, and some would question how true it is to the soul-like experience to begin with. But for those who are interested in playing through such an experience and don't really care about how well it does encapsulate that experience, From the Ashes more or less provides that. Of course, this assumes you've already played through, well, the plethora of Soul-like games that are out there to begin with, like Sicario, The Surge, or I mean any of the Dead Soul games, obviously. Dead Soul? Dark Soul. Well, that wraps it up for me. Till next time.